What would happen if you decided to microdose amphetamines? Would this lead to a permanent increase in dopamine sensitivity? Well, in this video, what I'm going to do is look at how microdosing amphetamines can lead to almost permanent changes in your brain that make you feel hypersensitive to dopamine in the long run. So for those of you who are brand new to my channel, my name is Lucas, the founder of Boost Your Biology. And if you're new to my channel and you love these videos, please do hit subscribe and like this video, as it does help with the YouTube algorithm. So first of all, I really want to emphasize this massive disclaimer that this is absolutely not medical advice, and do not try this experiment or this protocol without first consulting your healthcare practitioner. And what I want to do in this video is outline interesting research that can hopefully give us clues and insights into how we as humans can optimize our dopamine system. And this goes beyond the various other dopamine optimization tools and protocols, which I've covered extensively on this channel. What I want to do is actually outline the importance of dosages and also outline this terminology known as dopamine supersensitivity. So in a nutshell, microdosing stimulants, for example, 1.25 to 2.5 milligrams of dextroamphetamine, 5 milligrams of methylphenidate, or 2.5 milligrams of Adderall, can cause a phenomenon known as sensitization, or increased number of high sensitivity dopamine receptors in the brain, which results in the upregulation of these dopaminergic receptors. Now, this is theorized to be a hormetic response, which is actually controversial in the scientific community. And this leads to reverse tolerance of dopaminergic drugs. Now, this phrase here, the reverse tolerance, basically refers to that your body becomes more sensitive to the same dosage over time. This basically means that the same dose that you first start on becomes stronger. You don't build tolerance like you do typically with, let's say, caffeine or nicotine. Whereas with this reverse tolerance effect, we're actually seeing a reduction in tolerance to the given drug. Now, the consequences of dopamine sensitization are increased motivation, confidence, focus, sense of well-being. And some of these side effects, however, are inability to fall asleep, sleeping for no need for more than 6 hours of sleep, motor tics, irrational thinking and decision-making, and extreme sensitivity to any dopaminergic stimulants. And so there are many anecdotes online of individuals who have decided to embark on this particular experiment to a degree. And what's absolutely profound is that it is potentially possible, because in monkeys themselves, when they administered microdoses of amphetamines, they noticed that the effects and changes in the brain occurred and remained for up to 28 months after dosing, which basically reinforces that this particular protocol of microdosing amphetamines or microdosing stimulants can potentially lead to irreversible brain changes. So that is something we really need to consider. Now, here's some pretty interesting research. The study here was titled Human Response to Repeated Low-Dose D-Amphetamine, Evidence for Behavioral Enhancement and Tolerance. The next study here was looking at long-lasting effects of escalating doses of D-amphetamine on brain monoamine, amphetamine-induced stereotyped behavior, and spontaneous nocturnal locomotion. Now, here's an anecdotal report, which is obviously a weak form of evidence, but I thought it'd be worthwhile to bring this to your attention. This guy reported that microdosing amphetamines, the results, here's what he said. I microdosed amphetamine for 12 days to boost my dopamine sensitivity in a long term to get more motivation. I used the nasal spray method. My dosage was 0.8 milligrams in the morning and 0.4 milligrams in the afternoon. I started to feel the effect on day 4 and gradually reduced my dosage. Here are some of the positive effects that he noticed. Increased willingness to do things, increased sociability, lucid and more rapid thought process, feeling that I have more time to do things, don't feel caffeine hangover anymore. The negatives were insomnia and disturbed sleep, thirst and increased water intake, involuntary muscle twitches, and sometimes irrationality. So that's what one guy noted about microdosing amphetamines. Now, the next user, again, a very weak form of evidence, but it is anecdotal. And we're just sort of merging the animal studies, what we saw in these monkey studies. Now, this particular thread was titled, Suffering from Persistent Dopamine Sensitization. Did anyone have it? And here's what he says the problem is. This is what I believe to be dopamine sensitization from taking very low doses of methylphenidate intermittently in October 2014. Regular dose was 60 milligrams per day. A few times I took only 5 milligrams per day, and that's when the sensitization started. I've used methylphenidate on and off since, and currently am 106 days off it completely in an attempt to let my dopamine system normalize. However, I still do suffer from long-term consequences on a daily basis. And now here are his list of symptoms, so current symptoms. Number 1, occasional motor tics, so rapidly moving the neck or shoulders unexpectedly. Lowered sleep quality. I usually wake up after 5 to 6 hours of sleep with a high heart rate and have difficulty falling back asleep. Next one is extreme tiredness. I'm extremely tired through the entire day. This is the worst symptom that I have, and I believe this is because of impaired sleep quality due to dopamine hypersensitivity. He also noted increased sensitivity to rewards, so food, gaming, and he said that he feels a sense of actual physical euphoria like on a low dose of stimulants after a good meal. The euphoria after meals is sometimes so strong, I have some difficulty breathing. During a video game, I'll feel an adrenaline rush as if massive amounts of energy are flowing in my muscles. He also noted uncontrollable teeth grinding, so sweetened drinks with high sugar contents cause euphoria and teeth grinding within minutes. Also, sometimes motor tics of uncontrollable tongue and lip movements. Most foods high in fat or sugar will do this. He also noted a psychotic feeling. So when he gets angry over something, he feels a psychotic rage coming up all over his body. He becomes wide awake, feeling on the hunt to satisfy his anger. It's hard to explain, but sometimes he gets so awake and energetic that he feels psychotic. The next point is that he had a very strong sex drive. He said that his sex drive is very strong, much stronger than what it was before the sensitization occurred. Almost every girl I see my age looks 10 out of 10 to me, and I can't stop imagining sexual scenes in my head at night. I feel like an animal in this aspect. Severe obsessive anxiety. I've always had OCD and generalized anxiety, but after the sensitization started, my OCD has become significantly worse. If my parents are gone for slightly longer than they should, I think, what if they died in an accident or when making food, constantly afraid to get some dish soap on my food and die from poisoning. Now, obviously, these are anecdotal reports, but I do think this is really interesting to hear what people say about the microdosing of amphetamines and how that's affected their behaviors in the long run. Now, here, this study quoted, other studies have found that some monkeys treated with chronic amphetamine exhibit catatonic-like states. For example, sitting frozen in one spot while staring off into space for extended periods of time. One of the drawbacks of chronic amphetamine in animal models of psychosis is that they induce neurotoxicity of the nigrostriatal dopamine system. In rodents, it has been shown that nigrostriatal neurotoxicity can be avoided if amphetamine treatment consists of repeated, intermittent low-dose exposure to the drug. Compared to chronic and high-dose regimens, escalation of low doses permits neuronal adaptation and more closely models drug use in human amphetamine addicts. And the permanent dopamine sensitization here was quoted in the study. After chronic treatment, enhanced behavioral responses to amphetamine challenge were readily apparent at 5 days post-withdrawal and were still present at 28 months post-withdrawal. So they're seeing that these changes remained for up to 28 months after they'd finished the microdosing of the amphetamines, which is absolutely insane. So what can we learn from this research? Well, first of all, we need to understand that less can truly be more. And I've said this time and time again with various other nootropics and supplements and drugs that sometimes lower doses can elicit a completely different effect compared to higher doses. And also we need to consider that dosages are absolutely critical when evaluating the effectiveness of drugs, supplements, peptides, and nootropics. And what we also must really factor in, and this is something that I've mentioned numerous times, is that we need to evaluate the effects of compounds, not only how they affect us on day one, but perhaps how they actually affect us 2, 3, 4, 5 days after we take that particular supplement or compound. For example, there are certain drugs and compounds that I've personally used that on day one, they elicit a very negative effect, but then on day 4, day 5, day 6, and longer, I actually feel the benefits of that particular compound, even though it's like 4, 5, 6 days after dosing. We also need to consider the long-term implications of what we decide to use on a daily basis. And the other point to note here is that dopamine supersensitivity sounds absolutely amazing on paper, but living life stuck in a highly dopaminergic sensitive state would be extremely challenging and massively impact our quality of life. There are other ways to mildly enhance the dopamine system without needing to microdose amphetamines. We have discussed this in my Limitless program briefly. We spoke about various dopamine optimization protocols that are very underground and novel. But I do think there are safer ways to optimize the dopamine system that doesn't involve the use of amphetamines. But overall, I think this research is pretty outstanding and pretty crazy, actually. So if you have any questions or you want to contribute to this particular video thread, leave a comment down below. Let's get a discussion going. What your thoughts are on this particular research, and all the comments do help the algorithm. Thanks, guys. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.